Welcome to episode 154 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. We've talked quite a bit about the process of people gathering into groups and joining groups that become part of their identity. It is part of being human that we must connect and work together to survive this life. It just doesn't work to have nothing but individuals doing their own thing. It has to take some sort of shape and form that moves the story forward. One of the main advantages of forming those groups and gathering those people is that you amass power. The larger the group, the greater the human and financial resources, and thus the greater power. This type of power has the ability to define our reality. It sets the rules and it sets the consequences for those who do not comply. The reality that is defined reflects the particular viewpoints of those who lead the largest groups. They are doing what they think is right, which they feel is their ultimate defense. It is completely natural that their viewpoints, those that are imposed on everyone else, become the power structure, the set of conditions that we all must abide. It becomes the water that we swim in. We can't always see how their choices create the outcomes that they do. Some of the outcomes are intentional, and as always, some of the outcomes are unintended consequences. You can't always tell the difference, and for those affected, it matters little. The town or city you live in reflects the ideals of those who have the most power. The country you live in reflects the ideals of those who have the most power. Of course, those with the power are beholden to those who gave them that power. They are not beholden to those who are on the fringes, those with no allegiance to them, and thus little or no power. They do not have to care about anyone who is not a part of their group. As a society, if we are lucky, we get to have some say in who has the power going forward. Obviously, those who benefit most from the way things are right now are not driven to vote for anything to change. It is a very human trait to want to tip things in your own favor, which is completely understandable. Most people live their day-to-day lives hanging by a thread. They are struggling with whatever life looks like for them. They are trying to get up in the morning and do all that they need to do to care for themselves and their people. They struggle to keep a roof over their heads and food on their plates. They struggle to remember to pay their bills on time and all the assorted tasks that life requires of them. They have learned how to survive in the existing system of power and aren't all that interested in shaking things up. We as humans are not all wired for change. We want to know what we can expect at every turn, as that lessens our anxiety. We need to tell ourselves that we can anticipate what the future will hold. Of course, deep down inside, we know that we don't really have the ability to control what the future will be. It is just a silly little mind trick that we like to employ to help us feel we are safe and sane. Then the world, as they know it, gets poked with a sharp stick. Then those people who just can't leave well enough alone start to scream about social justice. Who has time for all that? I Googled the meaning of social justice, and this beautiful description popped up. The goal of social justice is the full and equal participation of all groups in a society that is mutually shaped to meet their needs. Social justice includes a vision of society in which the distribution of resources is equitable and all members are physically and psychologically safe and secure. Okay, the first problematic idea that jumps out at me in that statement is the part about full and equal participation of all groups in a society. That is not how we have been wired in the past. We have lived in a world where our society is either influenced by one side of the political spectrum, the conservatives, or the other side of the spectrum, the progressives. One of the two has the power to shape policy at any given time. We used to think that there were distinct policy positions that defined the two sides, but recent events make it pretty clear that that is not really the case. One side is adamantly anti-abortion, though they are happy to promote to a position of power a man who has paid for multiple abortions and has basically abandoned the children who he fathered. Turns out, it is not at all about beliefs. It is all about power. Who has it and what they will do with it once it is granted. There are some different issues that come up as we try to make this planet a better place. These are some of the issues that we think keep us from being all that we could be, especially in terms of inclusion. A couple of these are racism and the patriarchy. These may seem like separate issues, but everything is intertwined. It all comes back to power. The societies that we inhabit right now have all been shaped and defined by those who originally had the most power, straight white men. Racism and patriarchy just hold those people in power. The power structure behaves as if they are of greater value than all women and all people of color. This time that we are living in is a time when we have come here to change this fundamental assumption. To make that change, we have to include more people in positions of power. But you have to understand that if the society is set up in a way that makes your life easier, there is little to no reason for you to hope that will change. I think of someone quite close to me who went to a prestigious college and worked for a company that made him very wealthy. He feels really great about what he accomplished, as he should, but I see his life story as having an asterisk by it. I see it that way because he came into this world as a straight white man. He went to a school that, when he was there, was comprised of mostly white males. The job he took after college was with a company that mostly hired white men to leadership positions. The water that he was swimming in supported his growth and advancement to the exclusion of women and people of color. He had a major leg up simply by being a representative of those who had the power at the time. One can only wonder how his life would have gone had he been in competition with women and people of color who were seen and treated as his equals. Of course, he is someone who will always vote to keep everything as it is, everything as it was when he was coming up. His wife will vote the same because she has been the recipient of all of the benefits his life affords her. And I get that. I get not wanting to rock the boat when you are in a system that has you at top of mind. In fact, it's almost impossible to believe that any straight white men and the women who benefit from their privilege would ever vote in a way that would result in them not having a leg up. It makes sense to fight for more power when you have been squeezed out, but it takes a really big person with a grander vision to want to give up some of their power so that life can be more equitable for people who are not exactly like them, people they don't even know. I also get why people are resistant to digging up the past, though it is absolutely necessary. No one wants to re-examine their own thinking, let alone pick through the dubious thoughts and actions of their ancestors. As humans, we like to think that we are right and above reproach. It hurts to dig into what we have said and done that doesn't align with our own vision of self. And it hurts to have to rethink some aspects of who our beloved ancestors were. Growth and understanding are often very painful processes because you need to let old parts of you die. We are enlightened enough to now see how heinous some of the acts of the past were, though our ancestors likely didn't think anything of the sort at the time. Times change, morals are refined, humans inch closer to being who they have the possibility of being. As such, we look back and are aghast at what seemed valid and acceptable in the past. Some of what we do now will be seen in the same light by the generations that will follow us. That is what progress looks like. We don't even know what we are doing now that will seem unbelievable, wrong, and straight up idiotic in the future. I love to play a guessing game of what some of those things will be. Some will be big and some will be small. Right now I'm thinking that the practice of having lawns will be indefensible in the future. What a colossal waste of space and water. What a ridiculous reason to poison the planet with chemicals and emissions from caring for the lawns. Though it looks pretty, it is of no real use to any living creature. I can just see us trying to make sense of that one down the road. Hopefully it will be just as silly to try to explain all those decades when we thought that the only people who should have power and control were straight white men. Hopefully, we will be telling the generations to come that, believe it or not, there was a time when not all people had human rights or bodily autonomy. And hopefully, they won't be able to believe that ever happened. I admit, I am one of those people who can't leave well enough alone. I want to see the world we could create with the full and equal participation of all groups, a world in which everyone could be safe and secure. I imagine that it will be much richer, more textured, and will move us forward through making use of the best ideas from anyone who happens to have them. Thanks for returning for another week of Rebirth Revolution. Rebirth Revolution can be found on all the podcast apps, the music apps, and full episodes play on our YouTube and Facebook pages. You can find all episodes on rebirthrevolution.com. Please download, rate, and review whenever you can. Until next week, contemplate the areas of life in which you have power. Contemplate the areas of your life in which you feel powerless. Stick with your COVID precautions and use your power to include all. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay strong and safe and kind.